Hello. This is a matchup guide for, the lovely Ruby Sapphire, which has always been just a horrible matchup for this deck. Mainly, the main issues are that we are doing the same thing they do. We ramp, but because they play red removal and play steel, they just get into a spot where if we haven't progressed early on, aggressively questing with Smee, and maybe a Mickey or a Hook. We haven't really gained much from the fact that we play Steel, which means that we get to play mid-range to low, sort of cheaper stuff. Steel is more of being it's damage based, but it's known as the sort of mid-rangey, early color compared to red, which is a bit more top heavy and a bit more of stronger removal. So blue steel just naturally has a bad matchup into red blue, the same way that purple steel just naturally has quite a bad matchup into red purple. When you put steel and reds in each other, they do one on one against each other. Red comes out on top, but of course steel is very good into a lot of other things. It's very important as a color. So you're going into set five. We haven't really gained anything to help us in the matchup, and they have gained a lot of cool new stuff. So it just basically is the same as it was in set four, but it just sucks a bit more. So yeah, just primarily, I'll just mention what's got better for them first, actually, and then I'll get into the matchup. So now that they have Cusco, that basically means they have an item has a location and a item destruction card or removal card built into the deck, and it only takes up one slot or one. If you play two, it takes up two. But you know what I mean? They don't have to put a card for locations to deal with and a card for items to deal with. It's all packaged into one, and they can play that, and then they can save space. So it's basically always going to be in their deck. They've also got Tippo, which means that they can now almost always guarantee that they ramp on two. They can play up to eight copies of cards. They can play four one jumps ahead, four Tippos. They don't. Most are going four Tippos and two one jumps. But they basically they're working out the consistency of hitting a very high chance of getting ramp on two. And then of course Tippo can sing one jump, so they can even get even better ramp. And on top of that, they got the card Visions of the Future, which I've been playing in my list because I just think it's a really powerful blue card, which has basically just oiled the machine that is red-blue better and has given it more consistency. Being able to scry 5 cards doesn't mean they have to go into top deck mode as much. They might even play 4 copies of that card. It's just because it's insane. It can link them to the next thing that they need to set up the big next play. So overall, their deck just got better and just got loads of new additions, and we didn't really change much. And they got better tools for dealing with us. A lot of the things are splashback really, or splash damage. I don't know what the correct wording is here. But Kuzco is very good for taking out a Queen's Castle, or in their mirror to take out the opponent's dime. But also that splashes onto us because it takes out our dime as well. It's a matchup they don't fear very much. I think they think it's quite free. I don't blame them for that. So we get hit quite hard from the new additions to their deck. But it's not like it's unwinnable. There's no matchups in Lorcana where it's unwinnable. You've got horrible win percents, but it's not unwinnable. So what I like to do, I think the most optimal opening would be Pawp on turn one, then you play a Mr. Smee, then you Quill and Ramp, and then you can make a judgment call from there. If they are going to play a Hiram out and get consistent card draw, you might not want to bank on your Hiram drawing and rely on that. You might want to just wheel and go over them. But also you can say, right, they haven't hit their Hiram, their draw is down to like Talas and Scrying and stuff like that. So what I'll do is I'll just play Hiram, get to a Tamatoa, and just basically go over them in that way of ramping and card draw and deny them because sometimes your opponent will be expecting a wheel. You might even see that they quill down their hand. If you quill set up a 5 cost or 6 cost singer, they will assume that you're going to wheel. So what they'll do is they'll just ramp everything in their hand down in a quill, and then you can sit back on that and pressure and play a Hiram instead, and then leave them in a very low hand and low resource battle there. The matchup still also does have some aspects where the Sapphire part just jumps forward. The fact that if you were to quill and ramp into Tamatoa and they were to just miss their ramp or only get a Tippo or only get how far you go, only get one ramp, you would just win on the fact that your Sapphire ramping is a lot better than them. But it can come down to who gets quill down first, who does this first. And you've got the Simba as well. The Simba can be very nice if they quill, if they quill on 3 after the one jump, they will ramp up a bit. But what you can do is play the Simba out, take it out. Issue is they can Medusa back and take him out quite easily. The Simba could also be a Kuzco. So I think one of the benefits that we have in this matchup is we have Smee. and basically just want them on two. You want them questing. You want it to be really awkward because then they're going to have to dedicate removal to it. A lot of them don't play a Queen of Hearts or a Gaston. I'm seeing it here and there, but overall that's not a very commonly picked card for them anymore. So he will just get law and be awkward for them and make and force very awkward removal. It might be Ice Block, a Brawl or something like that. I've seen some really crazy ways that they remove a Smee. So yeah, he is very good. He'll get you at least 4 to 6 law before he's really dealt with properly. Maybe even further if you can pop score and keep going, but at that point they should have Medusa or something to deal with it. So yeah, you want him to lock in at least 4 to 6 law from questing, so it's very vital you get there. A new game plan as well that's quite common now is to get to lock in about. Hopefully you can lock in 10 law with questing law, so I'm saying Smee is going to be part of that. If you can get other things out there questing to get you to that 10 law, maybe some Tinkerbells or more Smees, the Hiram draw, maybe the hook, just cheap law to 10. Then you can ramp to a point where you have 9 ink, play Aerial, play Pete, lock in a board state that they can't deal with. Next turn, quest Aerial and tap with a dime if you have a dime in hand. Now that is a scenario that takes a lot of cards in a certain order. Visions does help with that. But overall, I'm saying this matchup is very tricky, and I feel for it to be winnable, you usually have to be everything goes right for you and a lot goes wrong for your opponent. So yeah, it's one that it's the one at the regionals you hope to dodge. It's kind of sad now because it's like majority meta shares is this deck. But overall, yeah, I think that's also some awesome plays you can do. Tamato will be interesting because in their deck they'll just big dragon it, which flips the tempo massively. They get 7/5, 9 cost character on board, and your Tamato is gone. So Aerial is a little more MVP in this matchup. I think you're very easily going to be able to item spam more than red blue. Because of the Fortispheres. The only version you might struggle that into is the item version, but I've always found that version a bit slower. It doesn't prioritize ramp as much. It prioritizes getting the queen out and using items to remove it, but because, as I say, we have Captain Hook and Smee, you can tend to just deal with their queen, and then they're just really behind. So I won't talk about the item version as much, as I just don't. I'm not gonna say I don't appreciate it as much. It is what it is. Yeah, once you use the Let It Go, save them always for the Tamatoas, because whatever they've got on board, it might seem threatening, but the thing is, it won't be getting them too much lore. The thing that they have with their deck is they close the game out with Tamatoa and Dime, so you basically want to save your Let It Goes only for Tamatoa. Chiempo as well, great blocker for Aerial if you want to try to get some free questing in, and you've done the maths of they don't have Maui something else and enough to kill the Aerial, and they're not in range of B prepping, or Aerial Pete Chiempo is basically going to lock them completely out of the game. Especially if you quest with the Aerial or something like that, play the Chiempo and play the Pete the following turn. There's some interesting things. Blocking and getting the Aerial safe is great because then she can equal from 5 to 10 lore depending on if you have Dime or not. But yeah, this matchup you have to aggressively mulligan for. I'd say Smee and Quill are just vital. I do hold on Mickey because missing ramp completely is even worse than not having ramp. But tends to be if I hold the Mickey, I'm hoping to get to 5 cost Singer, set the Singer up, sing the whole new world, reset the hand, and just keep going from there. But yeah, the only benefit we have into the matchup is we play cheap Singers. We're a bit, I wouldn't say quicker, because they play actually a lot more ramp cards than us now. They always have, but yeah, their ramp's just a little bit unique. So our only real benefit here is we're a bit quicker in playing characters and just questing on the board. And Pete has been quite a nice addition, but a lot of them have gone down to 2B prepared, so you sometimes aren't even locking them out of anything. They're just going to use Sisu. But Sisu won't take out an Aerial, so there's that for you as well. So yeah, just the main things is get a Smee on 2 and get it questing. Try get the Quill ramp, and then watch what they're doing. If they are going to Quill and just dump their hand with the Quill and they expect you to wheel, you can play with that. If you ever see a Hiram, you can just let them sit on that weak hand advantage, weak hand of just not having many cards in their hand. If they Hiram, you're pretty much free to wheel when you like, because your chances of dealing with their Hiram are quite low. So you basically could be like, I don't really care what your hand's looking like. I'm almost going to solitaire game right now. And sometimes a B prep's not the worst thing in the world. Sisu can be, so always keep an eye on their ice blocks and their Sisus, and how many Sisus might be in discard or whatever like that, and how much ink they're at. But B prep can't be the worst. It does reset the board as long as they don't sing it from a Tamato or a Sisu. You're pretty game for that. They will have still ink left over, but sometimes it's not really enough unless they're like 20 ink. But then why are you there? You probably lost that game anyway. So yeah, and also try and play. It's pretty much a game of chicken of what's it called? Cat and mouse, not chicken. With the dime, if you can burn a Cusco from their hand with the wheel, take that information. If you see someone pondering on a like scrying thing, like a Tala or Develop Your Brain, might mean that they have just bottom decked one of their Cuscos and they didn't really want to do that. They will always try and ink hide it with the Quill or the Helfarago. They won't let you know that they've inked it, or they'll try their best not to, unless they have to hard ink it. Um, but yeah, overall, it's a bit of a cat and mouse game. I think we don't have the luxury of playing back and going, I don't think they have a Cusco in hand. You can think into that as much as you can, but I think a lot of the time it's, I've got to play dime out. And yeah, if that happens, it happens. And that's why it's kind of sometimes best to get the aerial set up and then the dime, because then you're locking at least 10 lore from that. So if you can aerial Pete, then dime, that's just a very good play. You're going to gain 10 lore and basically ask them to respond to an aerial and a dime. But yeah, it's the same as it was really in the last set. They've just got a lot more new tools for it. I'll simulate a couple of mulligans. So this is sort of yeah, midi, I'd say. And like I say, it's sad for me to say that I would probably keep the Mickey just in hopes that um, I get some ramp, because if we mulligan all this way, we get no ramp. That's even worse of a spot. There is a valid reason to keep the Captain Hook, because it will be a one quester. Again, it's not as good as a Smee. I really think you just have to play quite greedy and hope, so you get two Smees there, which is nice. And that ends up not being the worst hand in the world. If that was a Quill, I'd say this is a very good hand. So you'd ink a Smee, play a Popsicle, get the next Smee out, next Mickey, get the Cogsworth out, maybe save this and see what's happening with their items to play it out, and then we'd probably have to reset to try find the Quills and find ways to start ramping heavily, because we are going to want to win this matchup by just ramping a lot and getting Aerial and Pete and Tamatoa and Dime and using those things, because we won't be able to go under them that much. Smee can only do so much work. That being said, if you have a situation where they're not doing that fast ramp to a Sisu, and you can go Smee a hook and just start turning sideways, you can gain quite a considerable amount of lore from doing that. So that's also a possibility, but I always feel that's a last ditch effort because the hand that you've been drawn isn't the best. Overall, on the draw, it's very unlikely that this has a positive win rate or a good win rate. I think from that hand, I'd only keep the Mickey. And there's something to play with there. I mean, yeah, you Popsicle, then Smee, then Mickey. As long as you're hitting the Smee, you're starting to do something right, and hopefully each draw that you get can be a bit more useful. I think I'd want to tidy up some of this hand, especially on the draw. Whole new world in them feels quite bad. It really is. If they've hit the hero, maybe not, because they're just going to have consistent draw throughout the matchup, so you don't really mind resetting their hand. Sometimes you end up being a positive because you burn more cards from their hand. Maybe they've drawn in some Tamatoas or some Sisus, and you've wheeled them, and then you've wheeled them into like some Mauis and just useless stuff they don't want. So yeah, overall, I think you take your chances with this matchup. Just really try and get that win on the play so you can turn it into a 1-1. And then on the draw, you are hoping that they are playing less efficient lines, maybe bricking, because they're going to be going first, they're going to be ramping first, they're going to get answers first. They might even just sit on answers until you play things because they're just getting there first. So yeah, overall, it's as bad as it always was. They've just got Cusco, visions to oil the brakes and things like that. So it's just, yeah, you know the matchup. You never really love it. Expect a 1-1 at best, basically. If not, push for a 2-0. They always definitely push for the 2-0, but 1-1 is not something to be upset by.